Julius and Alston Ramsay, how are you doing? Welcome to An Actor Despairs.
Doing great and glad to be here.
Yeah,
Doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
it means a lot, man. I'm a big fan of, I'll say Jason Blum and what he's been able to do with kind of like, under $1 million things and really stretch a budget because, we'll get into this probably later in the podcast, but I feel like middle American cinema is kind of diminishing. And it's either, an NYU student film or Marvel's Spider-Man 2027, and that in between so hard. And it's so awesome that you guys were able to make that together. And then you guys also did Midnighters as well, right?
Yes,
That's right.
And I read a lot about you guys and your work, and I'm going to surprise you with things, but I think it's a really interesting film that you guys put out, The Current Occupant, which is available. So for those listening, basically Blum decided to do his own kind of Black Mirror type thing for Hulu.
yeah, that's about right. Yeah, it's an anthology series, and each month they do a feature-length film, and each film has a theme for a holiday in the month, if you can follow all of that.
Yeah. And so basically then, my question, is you guys have been working together. I mean, you're brothers, right? But
So
That's correct.
so we'll just start from the beginning then. So where did you guys grow up?
We grew up in North Carolina in a small town called Asheboro. It's in the geographical center of the state, but it's maybe what else? Like 25,000 people.
Oh man, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so right above you guys.
Yeah, a couple hours south.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Families moved to Greensboro, so pretty in the same neck of the woods.
Critical airport.
Yes.
So then talk to me, like in your childhood, where did the arts start to happen?
I think it was a lot of just, make believe things as kids, like various games and dramas. Like we lived in a rural area, so a lot of like playing in the woods, that sort of thing. A lot of movie watching. I just remember a VCR when we were young and like, taping all kinds of films and
the Video Spectrum was the name of the local video store that we got all of our videos from back when, before Blockbuster was a big thing. So
Mine was Video 2000.
Yeah. And so the Video Spectrum sign is still on a building in Asheboro, and my dream one day is to retrieve that sign. It's about like 15 feet across and probably weighs a few hundred pounds. I'm 5 years younger than Jute, and so at a very young age, I was being exposed to the kind of films that I should not have been exposed to because he was getting into, the horror phase of his life. And I was probably closer to like 8 years old, 9 years old at that time. So he'd rent something sneakily, get our grandparents to rent something for him, and then I'd have a chance to watch it for better or worse.
Yeah.
I'll actually tell you the trick, the way in. So my mom was very, protective. She didn't want us to rent horror films, etc. Because of the gore. And I was young at that point, maybe 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. I read the book Helter Skelter in 7th grade. A girl in school had it and I read it. And that's not the kind of book a 7th grader should be reading. But I convinced my mom to let us rent Psycho because it was an Alfred Hitchcock film. So it was more artistic, it wasn't like a slasher, like this gory thing. It was this, classic of cinema. And after, a lot of back and forth, she finally agreed and let us rent Psycho. And then after that, it was a gateway into, well, you let us rent Psycho 1. Well, now I should be able to rent Psycho 2 and Part 3 because I need to find out what happened.
Yeah.
If you know anything about the Psycho films, 2 and 3, are not high art. They degenerate very quickly into straight up slasher films. And from that point on, the gateway was open. But it was all about, I knew that if I could just get the one, Psycho in there, I could rent whatever I want. And then my poor brother, was being exposed to that at probably far too young an age.
Were you guys very close?
Yeah, we have a middle brothers. There were three of us. We're all very, very close. Yeah.
That's amazing. So it was a good childhood for you.
Yeah, it was good. It's like everything. It's the childhood you have. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was very magical. And our mother, she really encouraged a lot of pursuit of the arts and computers. We got one of the early. We had like a Apple Mac, we had the Apple II. We had the
Yeah.
Apple II
GS.
thing, and then the GS, and then the original Mac. I mean, so she was like well ahead of the curve with technology and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of some of the old Sierra games that were, I mean, for me, like just when you think about learning about story and whatnot, like this is before shoot 'em up. So it's the King's Quest and the Space Quest games. And, those were pretty interesting games to play and grow up on.
And Leisure Suit Larry, don't forget him.
Oh boy.
And did you guys go to the cinema as brothers or as a family? Was that?
Oh yeah. My
Wow.
mom took us. I was in second grade, and this is one of the best things ever about my mom. She pulled us all out of school to go see the first showing of Return of the Jedi.
Wow, what a mom.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you feel like, at what point do you, because, you started doing an episodic work in reality television, right?
I did.
So,
I mean, because of my background, like growing up in a little town in North Carolina, and our family was in the textile business. I mean, this is, they had a small textile mill that made medical hosiery, and, that area, like, it's just not a place where the idea of working in film and television is even a consideration. That's just not what people do. And so it wasn't until I got to college, and I went to college in New Hampshire, that I discovered I enrolled in a film course my final semester of college, and I had a teacher who was really a mentor to me. And it was the first time I realized, oh wait, you could actually do this for a living. This is what people do. And for me, it was a real marriage, a synthesis of the humanities and the sciences, which were both things I was very interested in. And so from that point on, once I discovered that that's something I could do, and I stayed at my college for a year, doing short films and working in the film department, and basically teaching myself filmmaking. I never wavered. I mean, from that point on, that's all I ever wanted to do.
And also, I mean, doing the speech writing thing. I mean, I should have said this at the beginning. You worked under the administration of Barack Obama, is that correct? And worked for the defense secretary and the Homeland, or
yeah.
I don't want to.
Several of them. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was exposed and watched a lot of film growing up, and it was certainly like in college, I would go see every movie that they screened. We went to the same school, 5 years apart.
Oh, which one?
Dartmouth College.
Okay, cool.
I wasn't involved to the level Jute was. I was more into politics, political science, and was the editor of one of the campus magazines. And after that, I went and worked for a national magazine in New York, and then started working as a speechwriter for Don Rumsfeld for about 3 months before he was fired after the midterm election in 2006. So I ended up being the deputy chief speechwriter for Robert Gates in both the Bush and Obama administrations. And then I spent a year in Afghanistan as well, running the writing team for David Petraeus when he was the.
You say that so casually, like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just what's funny because it's like it's off topic. I guess it's on topic in that speech writing's like writing is writing, and there's different formats and versions of it. But it's like a skill set you develop. And certainly, when I was at the Pentagon, like I think that it was becoming a more serious hobby. I was reading books on screenwriting. I was reading screenplays. I think one of the most useful thing I'd do is like movies that I knew really well. I would pull them up on the TV and I have the screenplay in front of me, and I'd be like reading and watching to understand how what was on page was getting translated onto screen, because that's how you also start learning
how to write it.
Yeah, how to describe something. Like the language of screenwriting is very different than a speech. The big overlap, of course, is that a speech is about how people talk. It's about getting inside someone's head and their voice. And when you think about the dialogue component of a screenplay, all of that carries over, just because it turns out the first time I wrote a screenplay, I was like, oh, I didn't realize it, but for 5 years, I've been intimately studying the spoken language, the rhythm of it, the cadence of it, everything about it.
Yeah. I'm curious then, because I don't think this is a stretch to say that, like speech writing in some sense is screenwriting, because you're writing for someone else's voice, no?
Yeah, I think that's right. You're telling a story. It's a different type of story, but a really well-crafted speech has elements of just classic storytelling. I think another element that's I don't think many people think about is the foundation of speech writing is just research, because you research so much, and you have 10 good quotes and you pick the best one. And screenwriting is a similar thing. The research process is different. You might not find what you need in a book, but you're going out there, you're researching people, you're researching motivations, you're trying to understand like the world in which you're going to write in. So you have to, even if it's more like introspective, like you're thinking through your own relationships, you still have to do a lot more research, structure, and plan everything out before you actually start putting words on a page.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And then Julius, how did talk to me about, because I know North Carolina had, maybe this was, before your, or too late for your time, I should say, but like they had that wonderful incentive program where Wilmington was kind of really booming there, and they kind of fucked it up, and Atlanta stole it. It could have been a real thing. So when you decided to pursue this, where was the logical choice for you to go? Because I don't know if Wilmington was quite yet a thing. If that was, why not there, or LA or New York?
Well, what's interesting is actually Wilmington predated, like their work in the film industry, that predated the incentive programs. That was Wilmington was
the Mohicans,
filming,
right? And
that was all happening like before incentives were a thing. So you're talking it originally started Screen Gem Studios, which was Dino De Laurentiis. They filmed Firestarter down in Wilmington, and they did Sleeping with the Enemy. I mean, there were a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, I believe, shot down there. They filmed a lot there, Last of the Mohicans. And then the incentives came along. I think Georgia might have been the first state to do it, and North Carolina followed suit. And so it was all really booming. And then, the Republican state legislature, really with the rise of the Tea Party, they got rid of all the film incentives, which the problem is they reinstated them later. But for the studios, once those go away even briefly, the studios lose confidence that it's going to be a permanent fixture. So there were a couple shows like Banshee and Under the Dome.
Yeah, I just had Anthony Starr on 2 days ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
They all had to pack up and move. They had
to go to Pittsburgh,
selling stuff off. I mean,
I also had a lot of Homeland stars on the show. Same thing with Homeland.
Yeah, it's like you're never going to get it back. It's just like, a relationship, someone cheats on you once, the trust is gone. And so from the studio's perspective, really the only state that's remained, a serious incentive and kept it consistent is Georgia. Louisiana had an issue too, where they, Bobby Jindal, I think, did something 3 or 4 years ago, and it went away for a moment. So
we had the same thing in Richmond. We had John Adams, Lincoln, and Angels. So many other amazing things. But so then talk to me. So
for me, it was really, coming out of college, it was either, New York or Los Angeles. It didn't really, it's very hard to move into the industry in a place like North Carolina. You can do independent films, and there's certainly a good crew base and everything, but in terms of the levers of, power and creative force, it's really coming from Los Angeles and New York. And between the two, at least for me, the cost of living in LA was a lot lower, and there's just a lot more opportunity.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so then I saw you've done The Bachelor and American Idol.
Yeah. So I started the first 4 or 5 years of my career. I worked in reality television. And when I went into filmmaking, I decided I wanted to start as an editor because I'd seen a lot of directors that I admired Spike Lee, Martin Scorsese, David Lean, like they began their careers as editors. And I think it's a really invaluable skill to have as a director. So for me, I decided, also as a way to make a living. It was a way to break an industry, learn that skill, learn a lot from a lot of other directors. And, when I got to LA, that was how I broke in, was, working night shifts on, reality television shows.
Yeah, we all have to do. Hey, I got a podcast. But so Alston, while this was going on, I know you said you were 5 years younger. Were you in Afghanistan?
No, that was the early part of Jute's career. So, I would have been finishing up high school and going through college.
Got it.
I would come out and visit probably every couple years.
What was your major then? I'm always curious. Like, what is speech creative writing?
No, I was a government major, so political science.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I took several speech classes. We had a little speech department, one professor, and he was my favorite professor. So I took a number of speech classes because I really like speeches for whatever bizarre reason. I never really thought the chance would present itself to be a speechwriter because it's such an obscure thing. And like, I was an editor at a magazine, and literally one day out of the blue, I got an email from Rumsfeld's chief speechwriter. And the connection was a trustee I knew at Dartmouth who had been Reagan's, one of his speechwriters, and he had written the Tear Down This Wall speech when he was all of 27. So I followed Jute's career from afar, and certainly when reality TV is not really my bag, so it was cool. I knew of the shows, but when he got into other shows that I knew or that I could go check out of the library before the days of Netflix, it got pretty cool. I remember it was actually during exams one time, and we had gotten Battlestar Galactica. And no, was it Battlestar or was it was Alias? So we went in, one of my friends and I went and rented the DVDs, and Jute was on the show, and we just started binge watching it. And it was the same deal when he got on Battlestar Galactica and I started watching that. I was like, these are just incredible shows. And really, in that fanboy kind of category, I'm sitting there thinking it's really hard for me to conceive that my brother works on these shows and he edits them. That's incredible.
And Julius, because I have a lot of friends that are editors, how were you able to pivot from editing to directing?
I was all along I was making my own short films and writing. When I worked on Alias, I got the director of photography and an actor, and we had a brief hiatus when Jennifer Garner was having a baby in season 5. They shut down the show for a month, and I convinced a bunch of people to go shoot a short film for me. So I had that as a calling card. And when I was on Walking Dead, I made my intentions known that I wanted to direct, and I had this work. And
I saw you did 23 episodes. How many of those were directing?
I directed 2 and I edited a whole bunch more.
Wow. And what was that like? Finally getting that chance, because The Walking Dead is, probably one of those last remaining shows that's kind of started in the, shortly after 2010 is still going, Yeah.
No, it was a remarkable opportunity. I love the world. The world of Walking Dead was really extraordinary. It was a great group of people.
What seasons were you on?
I worked on it from season 1 through 5.
Okay, cool.
So
I know Bernthal a little bit.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
He's a
great
terrific
guy.
actor.
Yeah.
Great, really, really just extraordinary artist. And actually, Alston was a. I'll let Alston tell that story.
Tell it, Alston. Whip it out.
John Bernthal beat the daylights out of me when I was a zombie one time. Not his fault. I was trying to eat his brains and whatnot, but yeah.
You got an extra gig?
Yeah, well, I was in business school, so it's grad school. You can take time off, and Jude had been offering to try to hook me up because I was in North Carolina for grad school. It shot outside of Atlanta, so easy drive down there. And one of the episodes, he was close with the director, and so he connected me, and it was funny because I was was like, I don't know, should I bail on school and go down to do this? Like, I'm not sure. And sitting in the morning, looking in the mirror, like shaving, I'm like, wait a second. Like, I can go be a zombie extra on Walking Dead, and I'm thinking about not doing that for class. Like, get out. So I went down there, and they like did me up in the full like
6
2 hour
hour,
makeup
yeah,
kit.
2
Oh
hour.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I forget which season it is, but it's when John Bernthal was like, he was trapped on a school bus, and there's zombies at the door like trying to get in, and I was like me like right up front, and the door's getting slammed on my thing, and you know they
You're
have like,
licking the blood with your tongue.
oh yeah, I'm licking.
Season 2.
Oh, so
around.
you're an actor, man.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And so, but he had like a knife butt because they digitally put in the blade.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to stab me in the head and like, fake hold your punch stab. And I got clocked in the head with that knife butt. I mean, I had a nice big goose egg for a few days.
Did he apologize?
Oh no, he was so into it, and you would never it was awesome to see someone work up close and just to be so into it. Like, I would never say anything. I was like, dude, hit me as many times as you want.
Was this the episode you were directing, Julius?
No.
Oh, that would have been so
great
funny.
director Ernest Dickinson was doing that. Dickerson. It was, I think, season 2 around. I want to say episode 10, somewhere in there.
I've only seen season 1, to be honest, but
yeah.
So then I'm very curious, when you get this amazing chance to finally hop behind the camera, television is such a tough medium because the temporal format is set up in the pilot. And then the director essentially has to kind of come in almost as a technician and adhere to the visual standards and the color and the tone that's set by, I think in that case, Frank Darabont, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
so,
I mean, it's a group effort, but I'd say certainly in terms of the look and the feel of the series, it was definitely set by Frank.
And then when you get the chance to get behind the camera and, so many amazing actors, Norman Reedus and so forth, was that your moment? Because like one of the reoccurring themes I talk about on this podcast is finding your voice. And do you feel like that, like getting that chance to direct was like, okay, this is it?
I mean, I try not to place too much importance on any like one moment or even series of moments in my life. I try to adhere to the Zen vibe of not getting too high or too low, like not attaching importance to the ephemeral nature of life. So I think for me, it was certainly an incredible experience, and I learned a lot, and I grew a lot out of it, and it was very fulfilling. I'll say that. So I'd say, it was fulfilling, and it was, that the process of doing it was certainly exhilarating. But I find creative fulfillment in so many different ways. That particular, that was an extraordinary moment, and it was an incredible experience, and I loved it. But I've also, I had just as much fun, but in very different ways, like with Alston, when we're, doing everything ourselves, like making an independent film in Rhode Island, everything on our own, and we don't have like the massive infrastructure of a, big budget television series behind us.
So that brings me back to the question, Alston and Julius, Alston, I imagine you were spending quite some time traveling with these jobs, speech writing. So at what point, do you decide to break away from that, and you and your brother, like, hey man, let's go?
Yeah, I had, so I was in business school, getting my MBA, and coming out of that, I think
MBA was post speech writing or pre?
Yeah, so I got into business school when I was at the Pentagon, and then I put it off for a year to go to Afghanistan. So I knew coming on the end of my year in Afghanistan that I was going to go to grad school, which is awesome and relaxing and fun and all those things. So coming out of that, I think I was really at the proverbial fork in a road. I was doing some work with some startups in North Carolina, but I always had this thought of, Hollywood screenwriting. And I thought about it for years before, and I told myself, I was like, well, before going to pursue this, you should probably write a screenplay, right? See if you're any good at it, if you enjoy it. So I finally had some time and just made myself sit down and work on this idea that had been in my head for, years, and you just never sit down and do it. And I found that I really enjoyed it. And so I came out to LA and crashed on Jute's sofa for a couple of weeks just to get a feel for the city. And that's when we started talking about, like, hey, if we were going to make a movie, what would it be? And we started bouncing ideas around, and we knew it would be something genre, it would be contained. We kind of knew the rules for containment to deal with budgetary matters and everything. Because as much as we started going through the normal Hollywood process, once we got to the point of having a script, and in the meantime, like a couple months later, I moved out here. Once we got to that point, we knew that we wanted to have a script that if the normal Hollywood process didn't work, we could go out and just make the movie ourselves.
Yeah.
You just go, it's kind of a rip off of The Social Network. You're going to make a movie, make a movie.
Yeah. And I think, now, we've seen this with Sean Baker and Tangerine and others that, Greta Gerwig, it's, especially as an actor, I really identify with what you guys are doing, because if you sit and you wait for someone to give you a chance, I'm going to say 100% of the time, it just won't come. Sometimes, people win the lotto and they're able to get things and get traction. But for most of us, we have to create our own opportunities. And that's amazing and critical that you guys did that. And with that film that you guys are talking about, would that be Midnighters?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
And what was that experience like? Because, like, obviously I know as brothers, it sounds like you guys were quite close, but when you're in the creative lab together and then when you're on set together, it could be a really intense experience, especially, you're directing and you're writing and you got two different kind of departments coming together to create this cohesive thing. Was that a tough collaboration for you guys, or was it really just awesome?
I'm not sure.
I don't need any dirt.
No dirt. I'm just laughing. I don't think you'd find many people who have made an independent film who would say, in retrospect, like, awesome experience, okay, but who would say it was easy. And I think I went into it and everyone's talking about how hard it is. We're pretty talented, smart guys. And a lot of people made movies before. How hard can it really be? I mean, I was so naive about that. I was also coming out of business school. So I'm like, how hard can this be? And it's so much work because there's no one else there and you have to do everything. So I was doing more of the financial, legal, technical producing stuff, but Jute was doing a lot of that too. And, when we're actually on set, we're just like, Jute's out there negotiating our food contract with some random little Italian place in rural Rhode Island. Like, it's not like we went and got like the proper caterer for a film set. We went and talked to like a guy, and Jute's like doing the financial negotiation. We finished and we're wrapping out our location. I'm not exaggerating. Quite literally, Jute was scrubbing toilets because we didn't want to pay for like $500 for someone to come in and clean the place.
That's amazing. You weren't above it.
No. And frankly, after all the, sort of brain power that I was using to direct and make the movie, there was something cathartic about, just spending a day or 2 days. I don't remember how long it took, scrubbing floors, scrubbing toilets, cleaning.
Been there, man. I know how it goes. And that's amazing then. And when you did that film, I know IFC ended up picking it up, but was the goal to do the festival circuit? Like, what was the intention? Or, like,
we did the festival. Yeah, we did festivals. I mean, the goal was to, sell it. And we, we went to a lot of festivals, and then Alston was in, he was really the one brokering the sale, like finding lawyers, negotiating with, the various interested parties and pulling it off, which, now it's available on Hulu. So,
and IFC is no small company. Yeah, Midnighters checked out on Hulu. That's amazing. I barely know you guys, but I'm so proud of you. And so then I'm very curious, when you have that film finished, obviously I'm sure part of you is like, wow, I just, spent a lot of my time on that. Did you already have the Current Occupant in kind of both of your periphery of your brain? Or was that something that once this was all done, you started to develop?
It came later. I mean, there were, I think, a couple other projects we pursued both individually and collectively. In the meantime, this was
also, sorry, I don't mean to, you're also a writer as well, Julius, right?
I am, but
Yeah.
Alston's certainly the more prolific, writer. But we had this idea and had bounced it around a little bit, and then I had been meeting. I knew Blumhouse because I had directed an episode of the television version of The Purge.
I saw that.
Yeah. And then I was talking to them about the End of the Dark series, and we put together a couple original ideas. And this was, I think we did 2 or 3, and this was the third one. Third one's a charm. And this one was the one that they were really into. And, it was really a synthesis of the two of our interests, in the sense that I'm coming from, the horror background, Alston from the political side, although we both have, interest in those spheres. And then we both also have a very strong passion for science fiction. And I think this, this movie was the
amalgamation of all that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So
and in the film, there's a good amount of, there's a sci-fi element to it, with the psychological treatment that they're using in the asylum.
I usually find it pretty annoying when the host tries to summarize when I have the filmmakers available. So for the viewers listening, could you summarize, just a brief bit about the plot so that they can check it out on Hulu?
Sure. Alston, do you want to, or do you want me?
You take it. You have this one down, I feel like.
Sure. It's about the film is about a patient in a mental asylum who has no memory, and he begins to suspect through a series of psychological experimentation that in reality he is the president of the United States and is being held in this asylum as part of a vast political conspiracy.
Yeah. And Alston, I'm very curious to ask you, having worked for the previous administration and then entering the chaos that we did in 2016, how much of that, if at all, entered into your kind of brainwave space when you were writing this?
It enters into the brain space, as you put it. I think it operates more below the surface. We both feel that, movies that have too much of like a message they're trying to push across, they kind of like whack you over the head. And I think those movies, they don't work for me because too often the filmmakers, they lose track of like, characters, arcs, all of that. So it's certainly playing in the background. It's about a guy who may or may not be insane, who may or may not be the president of the United States, who may or may not be trapped in a bunker under the White House, which, as we saw, the president visited that bunker a month ago. I wrote an article about it in the Daily Beast, if anyone wants to check it out.
That's amazing. Wait, did you get to go to the bunker?
No. But I have eaten at the White House and the White House mess a few times. They have these little M&M boxes that have the presidential seal on them. They're pretty cool. So always if you're ever at the White House, ask for presidential M&Ms. That's the story. That's the main takeaway here. So certainly in the background, and then in the movie we have these sessions, which are kind of the mind deprogramming sequences, and they're in the form of these questions and answers. And there's some questions and answers that are relevant. Like the one that's repeated a few times is, do you think it's more likely that a patient in a mental institution will wake up as the president of the United States, or B, the president of the United States would wake up in a mental institution? And look, that gets to our current situation. I think the more relevant thing is just, when I think about it, it's really an institutional horror film, which are all about you're trapped in this world where they're trying to destroy your agency, and the powers that be are unthinking, uncaring bureaucrats who just, the more you push back and try to prove you're sane, the more that proves to them that you're not sane. To me, there's something meta about where we are right now, where like we're all kind of trapped inside or trapped in this bizarro world because of the pandemic, and the people controlling our fate, I mean, they don't have our best interests in mind. Like,
No.
quite clearly, the government's response to this has been an abject failure, and we're all held hostage to it, and there's really nothing we can do. And to me, it's like, that's institutional horror. Like, you're trapped in a waking nightmare and you can't get out of it.
And I read that you guys edited this during quarantine. Is that correct?
That's true. I mean, we had a wonderful editor, a guy named Thad Nursky, but we worked remotely with him. So we were in Arizona.
When did you finish Principal?
We finished Principal, gosh, like
March 2nd.
2 weeks before March 2nd. Yeah.
Wow.
2 weeks before. We were really lucky. And the funny thing is our father flew out to Los Angeles to be there the final night of shooting, which we filmed at the Nixon Presidential Library as part of our Oval Office sequence. And so he
so that's where I was wondering. I was like, how did you guys have the budget to recreate this?
Yeah, it was, if you need to rent a place, talk to Tricky Dick.
Yeah. In Richmond, they have a White House set if you ever need one in the future.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, they were pricing it out, and the sets are incredibly expensive. And then we said, well, why don't we try there's 2 presidential libraries in Los Angeles.
I didn't doubt it. I was like,
and Nixon, of course, you can rent it for the night. And so our father flew out, and he was there for the night of shooting, which was really special. And then I think he flew back on a Wednesday. And I just remember after, like, the virus was starting to really tick up, and then he left, and like later that day or the next day, they said, oh, they found somebody at like LAX International, 2 baggage handlers. I
remember that
TSA, had it.
Yeah.
And we're just saying to him, the stock market's tanking, and like, we're like, gosh, you got out right in the nick of time. And we had no idea that, the world was kind of basically grind to a halt 2 weeks later. So we were incredibly lucky to get the film in the can, because, the next film that they were shooting as part of In the Dark that came after ours, I think they got shut down, in like 5 or 6 days into.
So you just made it.
And they're still trying to get it back up. So yeah, we did it remotely. Blumhouse was very supportive of helping us. There are a lot of technical challenges with this. I mean, I think the whole industry has spent a lot of time figuring that out. But I think, what's true historically with these kinds of disrupting events is they tend to accelerate technological trends that were already in place. So what would have happened over 5 years happened in the course of 3 months. I don't think we'll ever go back to, I think a lot of the things that have come into play, certainly as far as post-production goes, in the film industry, are permanent. I don't see why you're going to go back. Like a lot of businesses, people working from home, working remotely, like
of course,
these are all things in place, and I think that's a lot of that's going to be permanent. I mean, certainly some of it will restart, but from a filmmaking perspective, it's been very interesting to rethink the whole way that post-production works and production as well.
Yeah, and also go ahead.
I was just say, and I personally am hoping that general meetings, the currency of Hollywood, stay remote, because it saves hours on the roads every day.
Oh, especially in LA, man. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so brutal. And I'm curious to ask, was it always July for this? Like, or did that?
Yeah, it was Independence Day. So the End of the Dark, it's an anthology. Each film, so it's essentially each film is a different, different writers and directors.
Right.
It's more auteur driven, but it's done with a television production model. So the crew is rolling over from episode to episode. And each film, the unifying link is they're each based on a holiday.
That's so beautiful. And then I'm seeing that both your names are on all these writing lists. I mean, do you guys have the next few scripts whether, it's something that you're just going to sell or something that you're going to work on together?
We have a television show.
Amazing. Can we talk about it?
Next time.
Next time. All right. I'm going to do that. I'm curious then on a meta level, when you're editing the Current Occupant, did you guys start to infuse things that maybe Alston weren't quite there in the writing because of the quarantine and the lockdown? Did some things get elongated or, because it's so interesting. It's hard to not view it in the lens of what's going on, especially given that like July 4th, we're in I don't even want to say the climax because God knows what's going to happen the second time around. But, while we're in the middle of this chaos, did that play in even in a subconscious way, you guys think at all or no?
Well, Drew was handling the editing, so I'll let him speak to that. I mean, one point I would make, since I think your audience is a bit more sort of technically inclined in how it's all put together. One of the most useful things for me as a writer was when we did our first movie, and then I got to go, Jude edited that. So he had done like the rough cut, and then I got to sit in the editing room with him while we went through and refined and changed it. And until I had done that, I didn't really understand what you could do with editing in terms of shaping performances and story and everything. Like I knew some of it, pacing and whatnot. I also didn't really understand what he was doing directing at that point. So just that you're directing to get the footage that you can then have the flexibility to make what you want in the editing room and getting as much as you can. And so like anyone who's writing, I would strongly encourage them to try to like sit in on edits and get an understanding of how that works, because then you can start reverse engineering the writing to make it like more director friendly and to know like what you care about and what you don't, because there's an old saying that a movie's made 3 times: first in the script, second in the direction on set, and then third in the editing room. And I'll let Jude talk to the actual editing process and what he sort of found and how he shaped it.
I mean, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And we had we had Thad.
I hope you had good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it was okay. We had Thad was the editor, and then we had a fantastic assistant editor named Freddie Brown. And so it was really the 3 of us were, navigating all the technical challenges that come with it. I mean, throughout the director's cut, because at that point you're just trying to get the all of it cut together, and then working with the studio and the network on their notes process. It was just a tremendous amount of work. I would say the benefit to quarantine was that there was really no distractions. The only thing I threw myself into it, for better or worse. And I mean, that's all I did. I mean, I was working from the day the pandemic started. I mean, they shut down the state of California. I left 2 days later because I didn't want to spend the pandemic in a densely populated urban area. And then went to Arizona. But I mean, the entire time I was working, I mean, what, Alston, like 12, 16 hours a day most of the time?
Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Probably not the healthiest thing in the world, but
no,
I'm proud of the movie.
Not. But it was an amazing film, and I'm glad you did. And The Current Occupant is on Hulu now. And some final questions for you guys, more about kind of where we're headed. As I mentioned earlier in the show, independent movies now, we're dealing with like, I'm curious to ask you guys, is distribution in the sense of theatrical, is that something that's important to you guys as artists, or do you think that is a dying experience, and things like video on demand and other things are going to be where that allows independent cinema to continue to thrive?
Well, both. And that I would, there's nothing that beats going to the theaters.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's amazing. And to make a movie, Midnighters we saw on the big screen a few times, and like the premiere of it just in like a proper arc light theater. I mean, it's an incredible experience. I think that theaters could die. It was already an industry that was challenged, and now we're like, this is the worst thing that could potentially happen to that industry. I think you're absolutely right that are seeing a squeezing out of everything from theaters that's not a giant Marvel blockbuster, and it's part
Yeah.
of a trend. I think beyond independent film, I think it also really squeezes out like mature adult dramas. I think is the category I'd
Yeah.
say, because there are movies that would be successful and are good films, but they don't give the big giant return on investment that these blockbusters do, where you put in a couple $100 million and you make $1 billion.
Yeah.
I feel like some of those are getting picked up by the streamers, Netflix and Amazon, just because that's where they're going to live. I don't see them really coming back to theaters. Independent film, I feel like it's still going to be people going out there and just making movies. Distribution for them is going to get tougher, maybe easier. I don't know. It depends on how the streamers pick them up or not.
Yeah, it's just been tough for a lot of filmmaker friends of mine that had films that were going to premiere at South by Southwest and Tribeca, and now there's a gigantic question mark about when we'll ever get the chance to do a film festival again. And I hate to be crass, but a digital film festival isn't quite the same experience as going there, and it's not even about the
remotely the same thing.
Yeah,
But,
and
go. Film festivals, to me, like the film festival tour we went on, and that was like probably the most fun part of making the movie. And festivals can be hit or miss. You never quite know till you get there, but because you meet other independent filmmakers who've gone through similar things, and they're really interesting, really fun people, and it's just cool to go, like, you go watch a screening and people are really into it, and then then you just stand there and you get to talk to people and tell them more about it, and they're engaged and interested, and it's good parties, good people, and they're just like, they're really, really fun experiences. In some ways, like, that almost made the whole challenge of making a film worth it. We also went to Europe, went to a few film festivals there. In Oldenburg, Germany was an awesome, incredible festival.
So cool,
we go to
man.
5 or 6 over there. We went to one in Germany, Poland, London, Sweden.
Ooh.
And then Italy, we won the Ravenna Film Festival, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so curious, then elaborating off that, because, a lot of people argue that the death of, I don't want to say death, but the slowing down of independent cinema has trickled over to television. And in some ways, do you feel like that, I'm not trying to press you guys for information you can't expose, piqued your interest in the medium? Because now I feel like, I mean, and personally, in my own opinion, the television narratives are greater than most of the, let's just say, public domain movie narratives.
I mean, I don't know if I agree. I mean, I think
fair enough.
But there's so many bad shows out there too. I mean, there's just
it's not sustainable because everyone's got content now.
Yeah, right? But it's like art. Some things captivate and compel the imagination, and some don't. I mean, you go back 1,000 years or 2,000. They were writing plays back then, and some plays were written that stood the test of time. Or you get a Shakespeare, and there are a lot that didn't. And I think the format of things it changes. But to go see a film in a theater, it's a beautiful experience. But I liken it to if I'm going to hike to the top of a mountain and see a crystal clear sky in northern Montana and see all the stars. Well, then I see the stars a certain way. Versus if I'm sitting in my house in Los Angeles and I'm watching, a video of stars on my big screen TV, it's a very different thing. Now, one is really convenient and I can do it in the comfort of my own home. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do anything. And the other one is a, pain in the butt. And, over time, people's priorities change. And that's just the way, I think human civilization evolves.
Subjectivity, I think that's what it all comes, you know.
But I mean, there's nothing quite like the emotional, there's nothing like the emotional experience of being in a movie theater. And I mean, what those did for me in my life when I was young, and my mother would take like when we used to see Return of the Jedi when I'm in second grade, how it really transports you there. And I guess, gosh, I don't know, a year ago or no, Christmas time, I have a niece, our middle brother has a daughter, and she's 3, and I took her to see Frozen 2. And, she dressed up in the costume, and we went and sat in the theater. I just remember I was more interested in looking at her and the expression.
Watching,
just like that, which it's very different than, sitting on a couch in a lit room and there's other stuff going on. And you're paying attention, especially a kid, and you're into it. It's totally different when you're in that dark theater and the sound and the music and the, the scope of the picture. It just transports you there in a way that not a lot of, like, no other medium quite can. So I understand why, filmmakers are so passionate about it. But there are certain, economic and cultural realities that, we face, just like, shopping malls. Shopping malls were great. Like, I remember being a kid and walking around the shopping mall and meeting your friends and It was this whole indoor thing, but, it went the way of the dodo bird. It just, things changed, and it doesn't exist for better or worse. It's just the way it is.
Alston, anything to add to that?
I think 2 things. One would be, I think you mentioned independent film and how it bleeds into television. I think the reality is you're never really going to have something called independent television because the budgets to do
Breaking Bad or something like that.
Anything really, 8 episodes, 10 episodes, you can't go scrounge that up and go make it on your iPhone and then go sell it. It's just it's so different than the business model. And the other point, I think, just because one day our niece will grow up and potentially watch this, in the game of who's the best uncle, I did take her to Frozen 2 a few weeks before Jude.
I forgot.
It was her first movie, and we did dress up. And I went, right. Though. It was funny. Our sister-in-law and our other brother came, but mainly
shout him out. Shout him out. He's gonna listen.
Cindy and Burke. They came mainly because we didn't know how she would react to theater. And I couldn't. They didn't want what if she has a meltdown? It's obviously not good for me to be the only one there. So, I think she actually probably had a better time with Jute, though, because I think it was a little overwhelming the first time. It was amazing. She's in a theater and just curled up in the chair, and it's a giant screen. And it was almost more fun just trying to imagine wow, this is such a ceremony for me that I'll go to a theater any weeknight. I'm bored, whatever. I'll go during the afternoon if I don't have anything to do. And to see someone building it up and saying, we're going to the movies for the first time.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Well, 2 final questions for you guys, so I can let you guys get about your day. But I'm so excited, and I want to hear more about this TV show. And when it comes, I want to audition for you guys, especially if you have a character with a good voice. I'd love to collaborate. I'm a big fan. But I don't mean to get too existential with these questions. One is not so much. But if you guys don't mind answering, what's keeping you inspired right now? It's okay. Maybe not that one then.
I mean, if I'm being totally honest, it's tough. That's just every day is tough, and it's up and down. And, I'm working on a different writing project, and I think I'm engaged in it, and part of it's because I think it's a real life thing. And so it's telling other people's stories. And I think just that it's getting a story out there that I think should be out there. But, I don't, for me personally, it's hard to avoid the fact that it's a tough situation. I unfortunately am a bit of a news junkie. I'm trying to cut back. But it's hard not to. And, every day it's it's getting punched in the stomach, and so it's hard. There's nothing easy about it. So I don't have a great answer for that.
No, I appreciate the candor. I really do.
I would say I'm a big, history buff, as you probably gathered.
I got a good book for you right here. Howard Zinn's People, the History of the United States.
Oh, yeah. I've never read it. I've heard great things.
Oh, man, it's a game changer.
If you look at history, there are always periods of turmoil and crisis and change and transition. And if you can keep your head about it, those periods of time from a historical perspective, they create realignments of various existing structures. There's tremendous opportunity in chaos, tremendous opportunity.
Well,
and I think, it's very sad, things happen, bad things happen to people, but, in the end, it's all just the blink of an eye. I mean, this epidemic, as horrible it is,
it'll pass.
Yeah, I mean, our whole lives are like that. But I mean, I agree. I mean, not to sugarcoat it, it's certainly difficult, but in the end, it is. The only thing you can really control is what's up here, is your perspective on it.
That's really beautiful.
There's one of my favorite lines. I'm sure you've watched the show Fleabag, but one of the best lines is when she meets this woman that she gives an award to, and they go to this bar, and she tries to kiss her, and the woman kind of rebuffs her, and then the woman, she's talking about like, what's the point of it all? And she's like, it's other people, it's relationships. Like in the end, that's all you have.
Yeah. And then final question, and I promise you this one is not bleak, but, for people like us that didn't come from, LA or New York families, or, families that are in the entertainment industry, and, someone is listening to this interview right now, and maybe they live in Washington or South Dakota, and they really want to pursue this. Any words of wisdom, advice for them?
I think that, you probably need to move to LA or New York and get into the business one way or the other, whatever the role may be, because that's how you meet people and you start building the connections. And whichever craft it is you want to pursue, you have to start doing that in your spare time, and you have to just become better and better at it every day. I mean, it's like every aspect, whether it's production design or writing or directing, like it starts somewhere, and you're only going to get better the more you do it. So you've just got to throw yourself into it entirely, and figure out other ways to make ends meet and prepare for the long haul. Because I think most people that make it anywhere in the business, they're, call it breaks or whatever it is, they're not like instant breaks. It's like a slow progression over the course of many years. And most people, it takes many, many years. And, the ones that get somewhere, they outlast all the other people that flame out at some point.
Yeah. Thank you, Alston.
I would say too, really think about if there's anything else in life, if there's another path or that makes you happy, that gives you fulfillment, consider that, because there's a lot of there's no guarantees in this. So much of it will be beyond your control, and the only way to have even a chance at it is to go all in, fully all in, and be prepared to sacrifice a lot, if not everything, and it may not result in happiness, but you have to actually love what it is you're doing, and you have to somehow disengage your own happiness from the results. You have to actually enjoy the process and continue to enjoy the process and really think in the long term. It's certainly not an easy path. And I just think, there are trade-offs. There's things about, that if you take a more traditional path in life, you may find more happiness there. It's just a question of what really gives you fulfillment inside.
Yeah, no, very fair. I appreciate that. Well, Julius and Alston Ramsay, it's been a true pleasure, and I'm so excited to see what you guys do next. You guys are crushing it, and I feel like the best is yet to come, and I know we're going to make it through this. And when we do make it through this, I'll see you guys in the audition room. And until then, stay in touch and keep writing and and thank you for your service. Or, you know, keep inspiring, because that's, you know, I think that's what we do as artists. We keep each other inspired so we can steal.
For sure. Thank you so much for having us. It was a real pleasure.
It was a real
Very
pleasure.
Fun conversation.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Much love. Okay.
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 Thanks.
Stay safe. Okay.
You.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.